Today we're going to learn a little bit about our grand staff and the landmark notes in the treble clef and bass clef. At least 3 of them. There's a bunch, but we're just going to talk about 3 for now. So once upon a time, people used to just kind of write notes up and down like this to show high and low. But then they started to realize that that wasn't a very good system because they couldn't tell how high or low these notes were. Was this a do and that's a re, or was that a do and that's a mi? Who knew? So they invented a system of lines. 5 lines they called the staff. As you're watching this video, feel free to pause it, grab a piece of paper and a pencil and draw along with me. That way you'll get the most benefit. So they invented the staff. And then when they started drawing notes on the staff, it made a lot more sense how high or how low they were. If the notes were going from line to space to line, that meant that they were stepping, do, re, mi. But if they went from, say, line to line, then they knew that was a skip, do, mi, and it had skipped over re. So this was a big improvement. However, they still didn't have any way of knowing which note was do. I mean, was like this note do, and then that note would be mi? Or this note could be do, and that note could be mi? Who knew? So that's when we needed kind of like a big letter that would say, okay, this note is G, and then that note is going to be our do for now, for example. So they started drawing a letter G, and they had the G kind of circle around the note that they wanted G to be on, which ended up being line 2, right here. Now, as time went on, people got messier, and well, actually, first they got fancier, and then they got messier. They did handwriting G's that got super, super fancy, and before you knew it, that plain old G had turned into what we now know of as the treble clef. The treble clef still circled around that line too, and it still pointed to the G, but it looked less and less like the original G that it used to be. However, it still indicates a G. So now people had a way to tell how high or low the notes were, and also exactly what notes they were. For example, that note is a G, which maybe in our example is do, and then that note above it is re, or one step above it in the alphabet would be A, and then another step above would be mi, or in alphabet letters, B. Now, the problem with this was that's not a whole lot of notes, because we only have 1 note per line in space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's only 9 notes we can possibly make. And if you look at a piano, that's only 1 note higher than 1 octave, and the piano has like 8 octaves. So what are we going to do with all those rest of those notes? Well, we needed another staff. So below the treble staff, we're going to draw another staff. 5 lines with 4 spaces in the middle. Now this one, because it's on lower notes, needed a different landmark clef. So instead of using G, they used F. And the F circled around, or kind of, I don't know, pointed around, you might say, the 4th line in the F clef. And that 4th line was bass F. Now, of course, just like the treble clef, it didn't look much like an F for long. In fact, this one got fancier than the treble clef did, and it turned into what we now know of as the bass clef, which still represents an F and still has these 2 dots that point or encircle or surround, you might say, that 4th line that is the F line. Now, if we count up and down, we can discover that there is 1 note that kind of sits right in the middle between the treble clef's house or clef or staff and the bass clef's house. Let's do that right now. I'm going to grab my pointer. Okay, so that's G. And if we keep counting down, we can figure out what the letters are for each of the lines and spaces. Okay, so that's a G. Stepping down in the musical alphabet, We can look at the piano if we need help. G, F would be a step down. E, D would be hanging off the bottom. C would be in what we call no man's land, in the middle between the treble clef staff and the bass clef staff. And so this note we know of as our middle C landmark. Sorry, that yellow is very bright and hard to see. I'm going to change it to green. And if we keep going down, we'll see that that middle C connects the treble clef and the bass clef. C, B, A, G, F. Perfect. So now we have one note per line or space going all the way up from the bass clef to the treble clef without any notes missing in between. Now I'm going to do that again, but I'm going to play it in the right octave so you can hear what it would sound like. So here's the F, G, A on the line, B on the space, C on the line, D in the space, E on the line, F on the space, G. And that is how our modern staff was born. Now there's one more detail I want to show you, and that is what we call the grand staff. The grand staff is where we have the treble clef and the bass clef joined together by this fancy bracket that looks like this. And that's usually what we use when we play the piano, because as we said earlier, the piano has so many notes, we couldn't fit them all into one staff or the other. In fact, this only still covers a small section of the piano. It only covers from here to here, not even close to the full range. But that's a problem for another day. At least we're closer, right? So when we connect the two staves together with a line and a brace, it's called, that's known as the grand staff, and that's what we use to play with on the piano, because that way it covers most of the notes, at least, on the piano. So from takeaway from this video is, first of all, what the clefs mean, what letters they used to represent, the G and the F, and what line they point to. The G line is line 2, the F line is line 4, and I will add in those letters, G and F. And then we were left with one note kind of in the middle that needed a name in order to connect the two, and that would be our middle C. So those are our three primary landmark notes on the piano, and let's practice playing them once. We have middle C, which most people can find pretty easily. 5 notes up from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have treble G, and then for middle C down 5, 5 including C as 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have our bass F. So our 3 landmark notes. Hope this helps, and I'll see you soon.